So let's talk about Game of Gold. I wanted to really focus on our match specifically, get behind your decision making in the hands and start from there. Round one, team sit and go. I'm actually curious. So with your team was Yoviral, Fedor, and Nikita. It didn't show too much on the episode how you guys agreed for you to go second. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys came to that decision?
Yeah, I'll give you some of the inside scoop.
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember, but the way they explained the rules at the beginning, they weren't that clear about them.
Yeah.
And I thought that all of the coins are going to be collected and then distributed evenly between all the players. So I was like, hey guys, put me second, because I think my live reads will be more effective. I think the edge will be bigger against the worst players, which I still believe to be true. But I didn't realize that then gave a huge edge to Yoviral and to Fedor. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the situations where I would have just said, let's flip for it. And something they cut out of the show is that Fedor and I actually had a pretty big disagreement where he got pretty frustrated because after we'd already made the decision, and the show had been like, you've made your decision, you can't go back. And I was like, whatever, fine, that's fine. I was making the point, actually, it's more fair to flip. And he was saying, no, it's definitely not. And we got into he got pretty heated at some point. And Yoviral was like, no, Charlie is right. You need to be able to see it. And I'm surprised they cut that out because it was drama.
That's a huge element that they cut out because everybody's under the impression that like it was just like, oh, it was just automatic, like no discussion needed, and that's weird that they cut that out. So match one with Olga, Nikita, Michael, and Kaina. Just some interesting facts from my perspective with my team. I was happy that David Williams was on my team, but I didn't even know Olga or Nikita. Maybe just because like I'm not even following the tournament scene, but they weren't like the big names like some of the other guys, like you and Fedor and Daniel and everything. But so I was very pleased when I saw Olga was able to dominate and just take first on the first match. Like that was unexpected for me, and it was just pleasant surprise going into match two.
Olga's a beast, man, and we saw that in the first round. She just annihilated because everyone was like, "Oh, girl, she's going to play tight," and then she just found a lot of bluffs, like a lot of bluffs.
A lot of bluffs. She's way more aggressive than I thought she was going to be. So once Olga took down match one, it was me, you, Josh, and Kevin in match two on the sit and go. What did you think of the opponents from our match?
I'm inspired by your game, and I'm inspired by watching you on the various streams. So I had a lot of reads on the way that you played, which is an edge. It's like I've just watched a ton of your footage. I've watched a bunch of Kevin Martin, and I didn't know anything about Josh, but I felt very confident against him. And yeah, it was interesting. I also was looking for reads, like live reads. It's like my specialty, I would say, and I feel like I got them on all three of you.
So the first hand, it was actually the very first hand of the match. You were dealt fives, so you opened cutoff, and then I had queens on the button. I 3-bet. So we started with 100 big blinds, 2 million stack. Blinds were 10k, 20k with a unique 10k big blind ante. So I guess they lowered the big blind ante to half. Obviously, this is like the beginning of the match, and I had position on you. You have a pair here. You're never folding, right? Like, especially with this deep. It's just always just a call.
No, all I was doing is I was tanking pre-flop just to get a read on you and see if I thought you were at the top of your range or not. I was always going to be calling 100% of the time, but I tanked for a while just to see, like, oh, is he ready to put 100 fucking big blinds in this spot? And that changed my perspective on how the hand played out for sure.
Yeah, I noticed that you made a comment to me. You were like, should we just get it in now? Like, I noticed that you do a lot of table talk with not just me, but just all your opponents, You're always just trying to get some kind of reaction from your opponent to pick up something, right?
There's like a set, maybe like 5 to 10 things that I would look for in that spot. Like without going too much depth into live tells, I do that in courses, but it's such a long thing. But just briefly, there are many situations where you can kind of feel, based on a few very specific things, where in their range your opponent is. So if somebody's at the top of their range, the middle of the range, the bottom of the range, sometimes it can be like whether they're really nervous, and that could be polarized, bottom or very top, and it's very situational. Often if somebody's very nervous pre-flop, it's because they have a really good hand. Usually people don't get that nervous 3-betting Jack 10 suited, but they get really nervous 3-betting aces.
That makes sense. So was I give off nervous vibes on that one? Do you remember?
Not vibes, but there's a couple of things that I saw that I actually thought you were near the top of your range. So it could have been ace king, ace queen suited, those kind of hands as well, and then aces, kings, queens, jacks. I would have weighted that maybe like 70% more than normal.
Okay, so let's go on the flop. So the flop was 7 of hearts, 4 of hearts, 6 of spades, and you have 2 5s here, 5 of hearts in your hand. So you flopped open-ended with backdoor heart draw, and you decide to lead like 10% pot here into me.
Yeah, 30 into 280 or something like that, right?
Yeah, very tiny. I personally love the lead on this board. I think regaining the initiative here, it's kind of thrown me off. What was your thought process behind this one?
Yeah, it's actually a really, really interesting one. So because of my read pre-flop that you were near the top of your range, I can kind of categorize your hand into 2 things with a reasonable degree of certainty. I wasn't 100% certain if you turned up with random king queen off. I wouldn't be that surprised, but I felt you're more weighted towards ace king ace queen, and then aces kings queens jacks. Against ace king ace queen, I can go a size that they're still going to call, and I'm going to be able to probably take the initiative and end up winning the hand in some way, maybe even extracting a little bit more value. And against the aces, kings, queens, I was like, either he's going to call, which is fantastic news, so I only have to pay 30k to see a turn, or he's going to raise, and I have the chance to 3-bet shove, and that's a terrifying thing to call off. If you raise there to something like 200k and I go all in, it's really scary to call off there with aces even. So that was my plan. I was just categorizing into those two things, and it's also like theoretically for somebody to play well against these kind of leads, they need to find like a bunch of these raises with just like nothing. Just like the king jacks with a heart, need to find like a really good bluff raise, and people don't find them. So I like to utilize these small leads in these kind of spots, multi-way as well. They're really powerful.
Interesting. I think it's valid. One of the things you said about my range were basically just really strong hands there. I think being in this sit and go where it was the very first hand, right? And I think if this was a cash game and I could reload and it was not in Korea like we're filming and I was under these bright lights, it wasn't the first hand, maybe I have like some more of that board, right? Like at higher frequency, right? But because of the stuff that we said, like I just think that like you're correct. I think more times than not, like this board is just like going to be a lot better for you. The chance of me like going to be able to just like bet you off your equity here is like basically like none, And so you leading there.
There's also an interesting dynamic where if you have something like 8-9 suited pre-flop, you might not 3-bet it because I'm a better player than the 2 people in the blinds. And
right.
You might just choose to take a multi-way for that reason as well.
Yeah. It was early on. There wasn't. There's no reason to go crazy yet. It's not like there's a player busted, and it was still four-handed. And that makes sense. So I decided to just call it. I wanted to raise it, obviously, but I just felt like I actually thought in the moment that if I did, you were gonna repop it, and I just wanted to avoid that situation. I didn't think it was the right time to do it very first hand, so I just called, see what develops. The turn was the 8 of hearts, so you get there right away. The front door flush does complete. I do have the queen of hearts, and on this turn, you went 130 into 320, and it felt like you were targeting my exact hand, like kings with a king of heart, aces, or like overpair with a heart, with this sizing.
Yeah.
And I can't fold, but even if I call here and I get there, it's like I don't even think that I was getting paid off. Like you're just not calling with a heart, another heart. You're just gonna check fold and play perfect,
Yeah,
at the same time,
it's a really horrible spot. It's a really horrible spot for you when the turn comes out. If the turn's just like a brick, you know, you're laughing. You know, you can have some creativity with the hand. When this is the turn, no matter what hand you have, you're kind of handcuffed unless you have the nuts.
Yeah.
You know, or you somehow have a straight. But it's one of those situations where I think I have two good options here. I think either my size works pretty well to target, you know, queens with a heart, jacks with a heart, and hands like that, or I could go pretty huge, maybe something like pot, and then only target specifically aces with the heart, maybe kings with the heart will continue, and then also ace king with the ace of hearts and ace queen with the ace of hearts as well. So I think those are the two options, and I decided to go for the small one to keep more of the hands in, maybe like ace queen with queen of hearts, things like that.
Yeah, so I had to call there. You know, I called. The river came, the 5 of spades, and putting a straight to the 8 on the board. This is where the hand got really interesting. So the pot size was 580, and you bet almost pot size. You bet 550. What was your thought process there?
Yeah, so again, with live reads, I didn't think you had a flush, and I didn't think you were going to have any 9x pre-flop, but I was pretty certain about that. So I just wanted to choose a really, really big size. I was considering going even bigger, but, you know, live reads are rarely going to be that exact that you could be 100% certain, so I didn't want to shove, just in case I got the read wrong. So I went a size that I felt like you were just going to be folding anything that isn't a 9 or a flush, and I didn't think you were going to be turning anything into a bluff there. I don't think that's the spot anybody really bluffs. Maybe like a couple of people.
Yeah, I was surprised that I think in the episode it showed like Fedor saying that like he was expecting me to shove there because I have the queen of hearts, but
yeah, I mean, if you want to shove there, you want to have the ace of hearts. You don't have the queen of hearts.
Yeah,
and nobody does it.
Yeah, I just thought it was suicidal. I didn't think shoving was an option at all. Honestly, I just think it's a fold for me because even now looking back on it, my thought process is still the same. I think that we're still four-handed and we're so early in the tournament, like the blinds, you know, like why am I gonna like call for the chop when it just didn't really warrant it? You know, I think the chips that I can conserve here for the times I'm wrong are worth way more for the times that you're just bluffing me off the chop.
It is interesting that I would actually never value bet that size. I'd probably just value bet a lot smaller.
Okay, to get a call for the chop if you had, that actually makes sense too.
You just ran into like the most possible spot in the world, and it's funny how people will respond to these hands, because if the hands are reversed, I'm sure you put me in a really fucking horrible spot as well. You know, or if there's another spot that didn't happen that you would have put me in a rough spot, but because people see only a few hands, a narrative can be created, and that's what happened to Robin especially. Like he just got put in some rough spots and made some incorrect reads, and everyone was like, "What a fish!" And it's like, no, you just didn't see him in his stride.
Absolutely, man. And I think also just in terms of the teammate aspect too, you know, that we haven't really talked about, is like with all these decisions, you're constantly thinking about what are my teammates gonna think if I'm wrong here, and that went through my head, you know, with this hand. This is the very first hand. I'm like, I'm really just gonna call off on like my stack here just to chop. Like, if I'm wrong here, you just have like, you know, ace-5 of hearts or something. Like, I'm just, you know, gonna get it from my teammates. You know, and that definitely was a factor too.
Nobody wants to look stupid, and actually that's why I started speaking to you. There's like a huge psychological phenomenon where if you can make it so if they make the wrong decision, they look really stupid. You can really tap into, like, it works for me. It works for fucking everybody. And there's a few really powerful ways you can use speech play in certain spots to make people fold. Because nobody wants to be the guy that calls the guy that's like happy and chirping. Yeah. You know, and then gets shown the nuts, and everyone's like, bro, obviously he had the nuts. He was happy and chirping.
Okay, so the next hand we played that made the cut was Ace King versus sixes. Oh man, this one was embarrassing. Yeah, this hand.
I'm gonna put it out there. I think you played it well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's walk through it. Okay, so this one you do raise from the blinds. The blinds are now 30k, 60k, 30k big blind ante. So I have 2.1 million, which is about 35 big blinds, and you have 1.8, which is about 30 big blinds. Pre-flop, you raise it up, I just call. I was considering a raise here, but I decided to just take the low variance route in position and to see a flop. I think in a cash game, deep stack against an opponent that I play with often, having more understanding of his opening range here, I may choose to raise a lot more. But I think in this format, again, like nobody had busted out yet, and I wanted to preserve my chips in this spot, and so I just end up just calling.
Call's good. It's either call or shove, and shove's a little bit too much, I think. So yeah, I think call's good.
Yeah, I think shove only gets called by better pairs, and flipping. So the flop comes out 9 of hearts, jack of spades, 9 of clubs. You decide to lead for 1/3 pot, which again, I like the size. I think there's no real reason to go big on this paired board. Targeting a ton of draws that I could still call with.
I think the most important thing there is that we think about the hands that we have drawing pretty dead, and it's a lot of like ace highs and king highs. And I go a size that a lot of the ace highs are backdoor flush draws, ace 10 offsuit hands like this. They're always just going to call. So that's my thought process there is mainly choosing a size that focuses on the ace and some of the king highs.
With my hand here, I have to just call. It's a pair on a paired board. It's just a standard call. The turn is the ace of diamonds. Now you pair your ace and you decide to bet 300k, which is smallish again. Now, this was tough for me because first I'll give you my reasoning and then you can give me yours. I thought that this was like a perfect card for you to continue barreling on if you didn't have it there, if you were still drawing yourself. And I actually felt that if you paired your ace, it was a high frequency that you were going to check. Maybe I'm just putting myself in your shoes, I just think that pairing the ace puts you in a situation where you're often way ahead or way behind. I either have a 9 here or I have like a ton of straight draws that may choose to bluff the turn. If you check, it's easy check off on your part. And so it actually threw me off that you decided to lead again on the ace, and it was weighted actually in my head more towards bluffs. But I think it was actually a good bet on the turn because it actually got me to call with sixes, right? Yeah, what was your thought process here?
So yeah, we're in the same leveling war, I think. And here's my thought process for why I would actually go exploit and probably bet even ace deuce here. And the reason is I think that you would still call with all your jack X, which there's a lot blind versus blind. You got the king jack offsuit, queen jack offsuit, jack 10 offsuit, going down pretty far to and jack deuce suited. So there's a lot of jack X, not so much 9x. You don't have so much the offsuit combos of the 9x, since you might fold a lot of the suited combos of 9x pre, and there's 2 of them out. So not too much of that. And then also a lot of the straight draws that you have are actually still going to call the turn. So king queen, king 10, queen 10, they're all of the offsuit varieties are all still going to call the turn as well. So I do lose value by not allowing you to bluff some of your 7/8s and things like that, but I feel it's combos wise there's just a lot of stuff that will call. And here's why I think that your call is actually fantastic. Most people will check a bunch of their weaker ace X, maybe bet some of the ace kings, ace queens, but check a bunch of the weaker ones, and they will fire 100% of their air. Like I've seen people in these kind of spots just go with their like 10 do suited or whatever and just be like, oh, I hope he doesn't have an ace. And here's the thing, when they do that, they always give up the river. And this is something you only know if you played a ton of poker. People will try and bluff you out of something that isn't top pair, but once they feel, oh, he probably has an ace because he called the turn, nobody ever tries to bluff you off an ace, ever. And so I actually think your call is fantastic. And it's interesting that in the future episodes, I remember there are also a couple of other decisions where you'll see you making what looks like a terrible play, and I'm in the room being like, that was a fantastic play, even though it turned out to be completely wrong. Because like the thought process is just fantastic. Your opponent just happened to turn up with a weird one. And so a lot of people, they'll see your call on the turn because I have ace king. They're like, what an idiotic play. But it's like, no, I like for sure could just have queen 7 offsuit there, and then I'm never bluffing the river because you're gonna have so much ace X in your range. Like you should have fucking ace deuce off, ace 3 off, ace 4 off, ace 5, so exploitatively I really like calling on the turn and then folding river because it's a really over bluff turn and under bluff river.
That's actually what I was, the plan was for me, when I did call the turn. I was like, I'm in position here. If you can fire again on the river, I think I can probably give it up without too much worry. I did worry about the vulnerability in my hand, though. I thought that a lot of overcards could still come, and I could still lose. Maybe I could have chose a slightly stronger hand to bluff cash the turn with. I do make the call. And as we see, the king of clubs comes on the river. Now the pot was 1.3, so you bet 450. For me here, like, this is when I knew that I was beat. With the sizing, the run out, and I felt very foolish for calling the turn in real time. And I was like, I just torched all these chips in here with sixes. How did I get to this river on this run out?
My sizing's just to target your ace X, really. Maybe you're cool with like king queen as well. But I was like, if I shove, I think he can actually hero fold some like shitty ace X, and so I went to size that. I was like, he just has to pull an ace.
Yeah, I think with my hand here, I think it's just, have to fold. It's unfortunate, but so I folded. Disappointed on that one. Okay, so after that hand, this hand comes up. The blinds are now 80K, 160K, 80K, big blind ante. I have 2.5 million, which is 15 big blinds, and you have 3.5, which is 22 big blinds. So yeah, I opened to 320K on the button, and you're in the big blind. What was your thought process here?
Theoretically, it's automatic, and I looked for a read, and I couldn't find anything. Honestly, I think I should have looked for longer. I think I didn't want to tank too long in a spot that I was almost always just going to be shoving. Got snapped, and I'm pretty good at hitting cards at the moment, huh?
That one was painful for me. Yeah.
I'm be real. I've ran pretty good at all-ins throughout a lot of my career. Everyone has their upswings and downswings. I've ran like trash for months at a time for sure. But yeah, as part of being a successful tournament player, is being good at these spots, being good at hitting the turn.
Your team actually end up having the most coins, right? After round one.
Yeah. We ran pretty good. We got Fedor did pretty well. He came second. I came second. Yo Viral came first, and Nikita came second. So
many interesting hands. If you guys haven't watched this episode or the other episodes yet, go to the ggpoker YouTube channel. All the episodes are being released on there, and you'll see more of me and Charlie on there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks, man.